Hey everyone, it's Renee from Sweet Pea Labs here with a preview of the continent exploration stations. I'm starting you off here with the slide deck that's included in the product that goes through all of the continent exploration stations. There's a lot of information and a lot of PDFs that are provided along with getting started pages and material checklists as well. So I'll sort of go through all of that and explain how this is utilized. It's a lot of fun. It has a lot of flexibility. These stations are not dependent upon one another. They don't build upon each other. You can use them separately throughout the year. You can use them all together if you want to. You can use them as morning work or in the afternoons as dismissal time things to work on. But it's a great way to get students thinking about the fact that there are continents out there and sort of what those names of the continents are. And so I like to start a lot of my lessons off with something called an imagined scenario. I talk about this in the getting started pages that are included. For this particular imagined scenario, we are using the book called Somewhere Else by Gus Gordon. There's an example of Somewhere Else here by Gus Gordon. There's not an online read aloud, but you can get this from your local library. I actually purchased it online so that I could use it on a screen and read it to the kids that way. And that was really fun. And so we start out this imagined scenario. We read the book Somewhere Else by Gus Gordon. And Gus Gordon, Gus is stuck. He hasn't traveled. Everyone's kind of flown away and he's all alone. And him and his little friend Pascal decide to travel the world. And so we are going through that imagined scenario. Imagine we are traveling the world like George and Pascal. Let's go somewhere else. We are going to visit and investigate the 7 different continents. And I've included this down here, the imagined scenario, down here in the speaker notes so that you have an idea of what goes with each slide. And I've included here a link to this awesome YouTube song about the 7 continents, and the students love it. It's super easy to memorize and it's a lot of fun. And so first thing we would do is get our ticket to ride a balloon to go out on our trip. And so I've included this in the files. I've included, let's see if I can get in there and show you. I've included in there, in the balloon activity, you will get the files of designing your own balloon, and you can cut that out. You can create a class display with all of the balloons, because I've also created this little poster that just says, let's go somewhere else, up, up, and away. And that could be a bulletin board or a door or out in the hallway. And I've created the ride tickets so you could really get the kids in the mindset that they're traveling somewhere and they're going to travel the world. And so that's how I like to set that up. And that gets them thinking, where are we going to go? Where are we going to go? What is it going to be like? And so then there are all of these different continent exploration stations that I've come up with. And I call it exploration stations because I'm not giving a bunch of facts. The students are sort of discovering, what the world looks like. The fact that there are these continents have names and they have different shapes. They look different. And so this is a way to go through that. And so you can talk about, how big the world is, what the world looks like, and that there are so many amazing places to travel in our world. And so I'll go through individually the stations and sort of what that looks like. Each station comes with a printable PDF that can be set down at that station so that there are directions and sort of a visual for early readers that might struggle reading printed directions. They kind of get the idea from looking at the picture. So here is called Continent Plato Press. And I would take cardstock to print out the different continents which I've provided. And those continents, then I would slip into little page protectors. And what happens is the students have Play-Doh, which they love. Be careful that the Play-Doh is not super ultra sticky. I've been noticing lately that for some reason, some Play-Doh is super sticky, and older Play-Doh actually works a little bit better for this than brand new Play-Doh. So they'll use their fingers to press the Play-Doh into the continent shapes. And so let me show you here. I'll go back into the stations here where we have the continent Play-Doh press. Let me see if I can find it. Continent outlines. And so this is what it'll look like, just for an example. There's a continent outline of Africa, and students will use this continent outline to press the Play-Doh into that shape. So they're basically creating that continent of Africa, sort of exploring what that continent looks like and what the shape is. And so obviously all of the continents are included in that. The next station is called My World. And it's a pretty basic station where you draw in color what you think the world looks like. And this is really interesting. I've included a PDF that basically looks like this. It's called My World, and the students then can, here it is. The students can then put the picture of their world or what they think the world looks like on here. And that's super interesting. I like to do this one at the beginning of the unit, and then I like to do it at the end as well, because it's interesting to compare the two. It's really interesting to see what they think the world looks like at the beginning before they've done all of their discovery. The next station is build a continent, use Legos to build a continent. So again, we're using sort of like the Play-Doh, we're using the continent outline shapes. And students are using Legos to build that continent. I've seen students create an outline. I've seen students build it upwards, make a 3D continent, use all one color. It's really interesting to see what they do. But again, all 7 continents are provided, and the students can explore the continent shapes that way too. And each of the continent outlines have the name of the continent on it. The next slide and station is continent word practice. And so I've provided a full PDF that looks like this. Again, for this particular one, what I like to do is, if I can, put it on cardstock. It doesn't have to be on cardstock, but I slip it into the page protector, and then we use dry erase markers to practice coloring in and drawing. They're all capital letters, but coloring in and drawing the names of the different continents. That's a lot of fun. You can use a sock or just a little dishcloth to wipe off the dry erase marker. Works really, really well. And if you're putting all of those things in sheet protectors, then you can just put all of your stations in one big binder, and that works really well for organizing. Each time you want to do a station or what have you, just pop that part out of your binder. The next one would be yarn outline. Use the yarn to outline the continent. Okay, so similar, see, we're still looking at the shapes of the continents. The names of the continents are going to be on those PDFs that go along with this as well. But, you know, a lot of fine motor skills here. Obviously, you would have to have some yarn that was cut into pretty long pieces, because the outline is a regular size piece of paper. Again, I put this in a sheet protector just to protect it. You can also reuse ones from other stations if you're not running the stations simultaneously. So it's up to you, but then throw all of that in a binder and you're good to go. The next station, make a design. Use the tracing patterns to create and color a design. And so I have a PDF of tracing patterns. Now, depending on what age you're doing and what size group you're working with, you may want to cut out the continent shapes themselves. Now, notice that I've made the cutout line very general. It's not super specific around the border because that's just a little too challenging. But what I had the students do was take these shapes of the continents, and then they would use those as tracing patterns to make their own design. So like they have a blank piece of paper and these continent tracing patterns, and they made the coolest things. Some people made airplanes. Another one made like a really cool person out of it. So it's really interesting to see the students' creativity, but again, they're manipulating the different shapes of the continents. So getting familiar that the continents have different shapes. I've included here the continent matching game. This is actually a free product in my store right now, a free download, but it's basically like memory. It includes all of the pieces and directions cards for the games. You can put the pieces and one direction card in like a Ziploc baggie or a little plastic container and create as many of those games as you want. I suggest using cardstock, and if you're lucky enough to have a laminator, you can laminate those pieces and they last a pretty long time then. And then students can play this one over and over and over again. It includes all of the continents. It includes cards with the continents' names. You can see an individual product preview video on that product. I have that in my store and also on my YouTube channel. So you can check that out to see how that works as well, more specific. But the continent matching game is included in this set of continent exploration stations. Okay, next we have decorate a continent name. And I'm including this PDF right here where students, and this one I don't put in a page protector because I let the students take it home. And eventually they make their way through all of the continent names and they get to decorate it any way they want to, right? So again, we're learning the continent names. We are seeing which shape of continent is coordinating with the name. And so it's just a good exploration. Next, we have continent and name trace. This one, again, I put in sheet protectors because we can use dry erase markers on this one, or you can print them out on plain paper and let the students take these home as well. Watching students trace the shapes of continents is really interesting. Some really will struggle with that depending on their age, but it really makes them pay attention to all the nooks and crannies that might go with a continent and really how different the shapes of the continents are. So that's a fun one too. Another one we have here, design your own continent. Draw your own continent shape, color it, cut it out so it can be put in your class world. So I've created a poster that says Our Class World where the students have created their own continents. And then they've cut them out and made a big world, again, as a display on a bulletin board or out in the hallway or on a door, wherever you want. But it's interesting after they've sort of explored some of the continents and the shapes and the names to see what the students come up with as far as like what their continent looks like. Is it small? Is it big? Is it like a crazy shape? Is it super simple? Is it in the shape of like the letter of their name? It's really interesting to see what the students create there and kind of a really fun display too. And then we have a continent mosaic. Use fun materials to make a mosaic in your continent shape. So I include the continent shapes again that are plain, but the students create mosaics. You can use paper, you can use tissue paper, you can use dot stickers, you can use the little markers that create dots on their own, which those are pretty cool. I didn't know those existed till recently. So then you create a mosaic. They can do whatever they want, but they're filling in that entire continent shape. Again, getting familiar with the shape of the continent, and the name of the continent will be there as well. So just another exploration there. So that is all of the stations that are included there. I want to go back out and show you the getting started pages that are included. So I talk about where to begin, sort of your classroom setup, what you need to think about when you can do the stations and strategies like that. I also include the Imagine scenario explaining where I got that idea from, what the Imagine scenario is for this particular product, and what to do with it. Again, you don't have to use an Imagine scenario at all, but it's provided for you if that's something that you're interested in. I also include a materials checklist, and I found this to be sort of very helpful because I would forget which things went in each station. And so it kind of gives you an idea like, oh, we want to do the balloon design, or, oh, today we're doing continent world word practice. What do I need? This is another thing that can be put into page protectors and into a continent exploration stations binder. And that way you can just use a dry erase marker to mark it off if that works for you. And so that you make sure that you have each thing for each station. So that was something that was very helpful. Basically, that's what we've got here for our continent exploration stations. The students really have a lot of fun with these, and it's fun to sort of see what they create and what they discover. Check out more of my previews. I have tutorials as well on using things for Google Apps for creating things for a Teachers Pay Teacher store. And you can check out my blog at sweetpealabs.com. So go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'll see you later. Take care.